Okay, guys.
All right, everybody. Hey, want to welcome everybody to Heart with Dan and Angela. Let me get this thing set up here right. So there we go. We good?
Yep.
Okay. And anyway, we got a special guest tonight. Her name is Roberta Hankanen. Hankanen.
Roberta Hankanen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And the title of the show tonight is going to be called, oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
Okay.
Angela.
So we have a wonderful program for you this evening, as we'll be interviewing our guest, Roberta Marie Hankanen of Minnesota, an ex-Worldwide Church of God cult survivor. We're going to be talking about surviving the abusive patriarchal control of the Worldwide Church of God. I also grew up in this church and got out approximately 36 years ago now. This is our first broadcast concerning the Worldwide Church of God, so I'm very excited to get this show underway. But first, let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Roberta is the mother of one daughter. She enjoys exercising, playing piano. She has been out of the Worldwide Church of God since 1994 or 95, or about 26 to 27 years ago now. She studied various religions for about 6 years, believes strongly in therapy, and wants everyone to know that they are not alone in this stuff. She has suffered much abuse of various kinds, which she'll be sharing tonight, with a focus tonight, obviously, on the patriarchal abuse, the severe patriarchal abuse and control in this church, which is very hard on the women and children. We're going to talk about how to contact Roberta, but basically it's going to be on Facebook as Roberta Marie and on Instagram as Roberta Hankanen. So Hankanen. Okay. So welcome, Roberta. We're excited to have you on.
Me too.
And I got to tell you, I'm really glad that the worldwiders are starting to step up. You know, the Jehovah's Witnesses have a massive regiment of people. There's radio shows, I mean, literally thousands. And people are getting healed because they're telling their story. And I feel sorry for so many worldwiders because it's kind of like a religion that's kind of come and went and fragmented and it's splintered. And we know some people in it, and they're really bad. They're really rough. I mean, they're having a hard time overcoming. And you look so good. You look like you're so healed and you've come along and whole. And
it's
makeup and hair.
Yeah.
One of the best we've seen yet, honestly. You know, you don't look as beautiful as I'm sure you did a few years ago.
Well, that's you can look a certain way, you can still be like suffering inside. Like,
oh, yeah, totally.
You know,
we get that.
That doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
I know you.
Well, you look good. Well,
yeah.
Anyway, we just wanted to ask you, you know, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about where you came from? How did you grow up in this thing? Were you born in? You know, what's the story kind of leading up to where you're at today?
Okay, well, I was born in it in 1976. I was born in Ashland, Wisconsin. So we attended the Duluth area church area, and I lived there for 5 years, and then my parents got a divorce, and my mom and me and my 3 younger siblings, we moved to Minnesota, and we moved around a little bit in Minnesota, but basically the most of my cult years, I guess, were in Grand Rapids, the Grand Rapids area. And both parents were in it. So yeah, I'm the oldest. And there's my sister and then my 2 brothers. So
how did your parents get in?
Well, on my mom's side, my grandma started listening to the radio program like way before it was on TV, and my mom was 4 years old, and that's how she got latched on. And my dad, I don't know, because I just know that I know he wasn't born in it. He may have like had some mutual friends of my mom's, and that's how he got in, but they were in it very strongly.
Gotcha.
very
Now,
devout.
were they in when Herbert W. Armstrong was in?
Yeah, he was there the whole
Was he
time.
there the
Now,
whole
my
time?
husband is an ex JW, for
Yeah.
anyone who doesn't know. So he won't know everything, okay, but he's learning.
So you were in when Herbert W. Armstrong was in there too? Okay.
Because he was the whole time really. Well, actually, what year did he die? Do you remember?
86. But so
Okay.
I was in there a little bit with Mr. DeKoch. So yeah.
Got ya. Yeah.
Gotcha. So take us back a little bit when you were young. I'm curious to just know what life is like in there. I know what it was like for Jehovah's Witnesses. It was crazy, but what was it like in worldwide? Like what's a typical week or I guess a year or whatever, but give us like a snapshot of like the worldwide church.
Well, okay. Well, the first 5 years of my life were extremely hard. I might get emotional, but that was probably where I felt the brunt of the abuse. For a fact it was. My dad was alcoholic. My dad was abusive in every form of the word. And being the oldest, I was told not to cry. It was after surviving a night of abuse, my dad went to work, and that was my time to just take a sigh of relief and cry like a normal little girl would when she saw stuff like that. And I wasn't allowed to because it triggered my mom. But even the cult, I mean, they didn't believe in that. They didn't believe the free expression of children. It was weakness. So we also there was a thing called blanket training. We actually rehearsed church at home because our services were at least 2 hours long. And I'm the oldest. I was 5, and that's when I left. So from then on down to a baby, we were practicing in the living room floor how to behave in church. Like a toddler's supposed to be blanket trained on a hardwood floor, take a nap, and never utter a sound. And if you did, you were the bad child. And so that was like ingrained in us to not act out, and being the oldest, like I felt protective of my siblings. I didn't want to piss off my parents. So yeah.
So at your church, did you guys have to sit on hard floors or was it carpet or just curious?
I think it was concrete.
Oh.
And there's blankets. I mean, they put blankets down.
Yeah.
But
why no chairs?
Well, the kids.
we were toddlers. They're supposed to sleep through it, everything.
Yeah. Right.
Wow.
So
part of you being on the floor and not crying. I know part of it was your mother you didn't want to get her upset, but was another part of it that you needed to pay attention to every word they were saying? Because we had that in our church where you need to be listening to Jehovah's words. We could never.
No, not at that point. Being that little, it was just basically behave.
Yeah.
It was more of a reflection on the parents. The parents were supposed to be paying attention, but not the kids. The kids are just supposed to shut up. And if you didn't, that looked bad on the parents.
Right.
And it was taken out on us.
Exactly.
I mean,
So
but then
codependency, then it was like they were codependent
on the church, on the leaders, yeah.
That they weren't doing their job.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they weren't being a good parent. They didn't train their kids good enough. And I remember them, if the one acted up in any way, the parent was to take them out, take them downstairs, and everybody could hear them screaming and getting spanked. And that seemed to satisfy everybody. That's what you guys experienced too, right? Same exact in the Jehovah's Witnesses, identical. They have the same kind of meeting, same structure. We had a sermonette and then a sermon. We had special music between the sermonette and the sermon, but they're set up the same way. It's very, very
this is
similar.
Crazy though that you have a
Witnesses.
meeting before the meeting, like you have a practice meeting at home and all the discipline and everything to make sure when you go to that meet. Go ahead.
well, not everybody did that.
Okay.
my parents were very like, we're going to do it the right way. So not
Perfect.
everybody practiced church that way, but some gung-ho good parents did, because they didn't want to be embarrassed by us, you
Right.
know. And then I remember like growing up later, like after moving to Minnesota, and I'd see some little boy like crying. I'm like, wow, they can't control him at all. But being a mother, after I became a mother, I'm like, I could never expect my 2-year-old to lay down on the floor for 2 hours and not make a peep. That's just like unrealistic.
Exactly.
That's so wrong.
Exactly.
Wow. You know,
So yeah, like,
a baby's not allowed to be a baby.
no, I mean, even in Garner Ted's book, there's a little thing called babies are selfish. Babies are inherently this, they're inherently that. If they cry, if all their needs are met, you go into that crib and you tell them no.
Yeah.
How are you going to tell a baby no? So, and then there is also tools of what to paddle with, what was acceptable to spank us with.
Wow.
Oh, that sounds kind of like somebody's trying to join the meeting, but I can't imagine that being a meeting.
It's okay.
Oh, well, anyway, who knows? It's like saying something about a meeting, but sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt,
Oh,
guys. Really,
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry. Where were we at? Was me? It just
I would just say, I was just briefly going over the child reading book by Garner Ted, Mr. Armstrong's
yeah.
sixth son. And it was just, there's tools you could use. Like I said, I was telling your husband, if the baby's, all the needs are met and the baby's still crying, you go into the crib and you say no. And that baby's supposed to understand when they can't even verbalize. But there was ping pong paddles. We used to snip off the ball and, you know, whack up there. That's what we were punished with. Wooden spoons. So yeah, I mean, that was like in Ashland, Wisconsin. That's where I remember being like disciplined a lot. But like as I grew older, like you kind of get the hang of it. Like, don't act out, then you won't get spanked. And but there's still, just because you're not spanked doesn't mean you weren't hurt. There was a lot of pressure to be perfect, like a lot of guilt trips. We were never good enough. I don't even know where to start. Like just like I know prophecy was a big thing on my mind, you know, because we were taught, you know, we're gonna get the call one day, we're all gonna leave. And I was always freaked out, like, how are they gonna let everybody in the church know? It's worldwide. And what if, I was thinking in my mind, they're gonna have like an emergency broadcast system across the TV, and that's how they're gonna get everybody to go. And I'm like, what if we have the TV off that day? What if we like are around when all this bad stuff's happening? I mean, that was like a legitimate fear. And I asked,
when did you guys remember a date ever being set? Because I do.
well, I wasn't even born when that happened. The prophecy, like 75,
Yeah.
I was born in 76. I just know that it was always like the time's near, blah, blah, blah. These are all the signs. And like, especially the World Tomorrow program and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, like that was like intriguing, but it's scary at the same time, because like that was the sign of the end times. And then these beasts. And another thing that was a lovely little thing for us kids to look at was the Bible stories. Basil Wolverton was the artist, and he was for Mad Magazine, and these these drawings are just insane. Like Mr. Armstrong hired him because of how he drew. It was fear. It was a fear factor. And you know, you see like he illustrated the Bible stories. And I remember being showed the pictures as a little kid, and I'm like, wow. And like I remember Job with the boils, and I'm like, just
yes.
So he turned regular Bible studies into horror stories, only different.
Yeah. And I saw
Yeah.
the pictures recently of those horror, like Armageddon, like everybody's screaming and, it's just, I don't know, gross creatures and I don't know, demons and fire and oh my God, it just like, kids don't need to see that kind of stuff.
It's weird. I went on that site, Herbert W. Armstrong Library.
Oh,
I
yeah.
started looking at all the different writings, and it's like you said, this baby has to be taught. This baby has to learn obedience. It's like this baby has to have the shit beat out of him, to obey us. It's like it's a baby. And then I saw they had 6 books on raising kids. It was like lesson number 1, lesson 2, and I know they were for different adults, but it was almost like they were micromanaging every age of your life. There was 6. I kind of,
Yeah, because once you are out of the blanket days, then you're in YES, which is for school age children. And then it's like church school. And I remember one time my brother, you had to memorize a scripture on the back of each little lesson booklet. And that's the only way you would get to pass the next level. My brother would just sit there, cry and cry. I felt so sorry for him. It was so much pressure just to do that. And yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah, it's just, and then like once you hit teenage years, then you're in YOU, Youth Opportunities United. And it seems fun at the time, like, oh, I leveled up, I did this and this, but you're so weird to the outside world. Like I one time wore my YOU jacket to school after a fun feast. Like I was so like on a feast high still. And they're like, the people at school are like, what's you? And I'm like, Youth Opportunities United. And I never wore it again. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I had one of those sweatshirts. Mine was white with blue lettering and some red. It was really, really cool. I loved mine too. But same thing. I mean, we're always weirdos, but we're taught that they are also not one of us. So that makes us look weird, just the fact that we feel that way about them. Like, you don't know about the Sabbath, you don't know about the holy days. And, I don't know. It just, I felt like I was just different.
Was it?
Well, I felt like that, but then I would also be told, when God comes back, you're going to be telling all those people that bullied you the right way to live. And so that got me through being bullied. And I'm like, yeah, just you wait. I would always think like that. And going to the feast was like, it was really nice to be around people, young people my age that, believed, forced to believe, but we did the same things, and like we weren't weird for a whole week. We weren't the weird ones.
Weren't you guys allowed to drink and party and everything at those, or no?
Yeah, that's another thing okay, you could be disfellowship for smoking a cigarette, but go ahead and drink, but just, I don't remember the wording because I wasn't an adult during that time, but just, it bred alcoholism. Let's just say that. I remember seeing drinking, especially when I lived with my dad, my biological dad. Like I said, he was an alcoholic, and like at the night to be remembered, all those events, like alcohol. And I remember my mom told me one time, like when we were at the feast, they said, make sure you hide your bottles and everything from the housekeeping staff, because we don't want to leave them with a bad impression. But so you can still drink, just hide it from them so they don't think we're like a bunch of lushes. But like, yeah. And
well, her brother went to a feast, and I said, how did it go? I'm thinking it's a big religious thing, right? He says, I drank. I said, I know, but how was the services? I drank. And I was like, well, what do you do there? And here's what was my description of it. He said, we go there, I guess they dance.
We go to meetings.
They bring a shitload of money. They have to spend all their money. I don't get this. This sounds like insane. Like you go there and have a big party and run with flags and drinking. And wouldn't there be trouble with the girls and guys there if the guys are drinking and the girls are
Yeah,
drinking?
and we didn't do
Well,
the thing.
No?
I mean, like, yeah, I'm sure I can't speak to all of that. I just know that being a child and seeing your dad get blasted, and then when he gets violent and go for drives, and it's all okay in your church. Like it's okay. And also, I forgot, I just lost my train of thought.
Feastlings. Somebody just said feastlings.
Feastlings. Like you would.
Thank you for that.
But I guess just that caused me to be terrified of drinking when I was older. And then I got over that fear, but drinking to me was like a nightmare, like, because I felt like I was spending for myself. And for them to just, and I also know that I learned later on that I wasn't the only one going through that domestic abuse fueled by alcohol, but don't smoke that cigarette because
I know it.
that's bad. But like,
Almost.
it really was just to see that. It was traumatizing as a child. I can't speak to what it was like as an adult because I left. My very last feast, I was 19 and I went with one of my friends and I went on my own money and we did drink, but we didn't get plastered. I mean, we drank and we smoked cigarettes. We did whatever we wanted to do at the feast. It was like my last feast. And I'm like, I'm going to do whatever I want. We even left in the middle of services and walked out to the parking lot and went on the roller coasters in Wisconsin Dells. So, yeah.
Wow.
It was a big thing. I know there was I know a pastor that got a DUI. There's like Gerald Flurry also. He's in charge of one of the splinter groups. He got caught with beer and he tried to pay off an officer with like $20. You can find that police report online.
Yikes.
So
Yeah.
So how long were you in it then till you finally started to break away?
Yeah, that's
okay, so when
And
I
are you
was
being shunned? I wanted to know too if you were being shunned now, because you weren't baptized, right? Or were you?
No, you don't get baptized till you're an adult. You get blessed when you're a little kid, but when you're an adult, you get baptized. So I was 17, it was 1994. I wanted to go out on Friday nights because we were never allowed to. That was the Sabbath. And I told my parents, I want to just be normal for once. And they actually agreed. But I had to show up the next day to play piano for the church. And I'm like, all right, I'll do that. And so I did. But then I got kicked out of the youth group. And the pastor said, basically, you're going to end up pregnant. You're going to end up being on drugs. And I'm like, okay. And I remember going to YOU events and my younger siblings were in YOU, but I couldn't be in the picture with other YOU kids. I remember there's this picture I saw and it was a deliberate attempt. I couldn't be involved with that. That was my punishment. And years later, when I became pregnant unexpectedly, guess whose voice came in my head? My pastor. I was like, oh my God, that's why, because I wanted to go out on a Friday night. How dare I? But I don't feel that way anymore. And I actually reached out to him and I told him, you made me feel horrible. And he actually apologized, which is was very healing to me. But like, I had such shame for being pregnant and unmarried.
Yeah, exactly. Of course you did.
Did you ever try to go back to the church?
Okay. So like, okay, I'm sorry. So yeah, I still attended church, and then I was still kind of like a little bit on the line. I talked to this one pastor and I'm like, well, everybody seems really excited about the future. And I'm like, am I supposed to be excited about the work? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm thinking, I'm not, because being an adult meant you had to take the correspondence course. You were a single, so you're on the market, and there was nobody my age. They're all like 20 years older. I'm like, ew, who would I date? And then the goal is to be baptized, and I don't want any of those things. So I'm like, no, I just can't. It really wasn't appealing to begin with, but as you got older, it wasn't any fun anymore. And so I did leave, and it was right before the changes happened. And what saved my life a lot was the ambassador reports online. And those are former students that explicitly told the real shit that was going on at the campus, what Mr. Armstrong was, how racist he was. But still, it was hard for me to let go. I joined GCI, the Grace Communion International Church, and I just couldn't get into it. And I did try other denominations. I'm like, nah.
You mean
I'm
like ones that keep the Sabbath, you mean, or otherwise? Just
no,
kidding.
otherwise just local churches. I did when the changes happened, I was devastated, even though I didn't believe in all the stuff. That was my foundation though. And it was really, and that, like I said, when I was reading the ambassador reports, that was really healing for me, because I'm like, I'm not the only one that questioned everything. And they also made humor out of it too. Like, if you know what this stands for, all these acronyms, like it was it was also funny. Like it was healing and cathartic, and I couldn't get that anywhere else, but only people that actually went through it. And so there was a while I just raised my daughter, went to college, was involved with a lot of different cultural groups, and nobody from my hometown, because I didn't feel like I ever belonged in my high school from my hometown, because I was the weird one. And then especially, like, my daughter was born on Christmas. That was a deal breaker. I'm definitely celebrating Christmas. And then my family did too. None of my family is in it anymore.
Wow.
Now, why did they leave?
Did they leave when it broke up?
Yeah, that's right.
And the other one I had, the question was, did they give you a hard time? Because you obviously left before them, right? Or all at the same time?
No, I probably left first. And my parents were easier on my younger siblings. I'm the first, so the first gets the hardest. But my parents were starting to have doubts along as the changes came, but they never made me feel less than that I wasn't in it. They were great. It was probably other people, but I didn't really care what other people thought. My parents went to GCI, but that local church did not want to move ahead. They wanted to keep the patriarchal stuff. They didn't want to. Someone actually told my mom, if they get rid of the holy days, I'm gone. I'm like, they still want to be told what to do. And so my parents finally just left, and it was really hard on my mom, because my mom wanted to take more leadership, and they're like, like she even tried to change the thermostat. You need to speak with the elder about that.
Oh my gosh.
So they went to a couple other churches in the area, but religion's got the same end goal. It's little, looks good. It looks good like when you first come in, but then bam, they hit you. And so my parents, I think my dad had the hardest time. He started out, this is my stepdad. My real dad is long dead and gone. He died of alcoholism. I had no relationship with him, but my stepdad, he was born a Catholic. And then when he joined the Worldwide Church of God, he really liked it because Mr. Armstrong explained the Bible. You don't look in the Bible and you're a Catholic. But when the changes happened, I think he really had an inner conflict about it. And he took his life last year. And I know that was a big thing in him. That was and I feel like he he wasn't alone though. And that's the thing. People are not alone in their pain with this. And I just wish he would have known that. Yeah, but no, my family was great.
Did you feel, when you left, did you feel like that you were going to die? Jehovah's Witnesses teach when you leave, you're going to undergo the second death, no resurrection. You're a pig returning to the mark. I mean, they really bastardize you. You're an apostate. I know they use the word apostate in your religion, but I just wondered, did you ever feel like you were going to die? Like God was angry with you?
Well, I mean, I did I didn't really feel like I had a super strong relationship with God to begin with. He was more based in fear. They would say to us, like, if you don't thank God for everything, you could end up a paraplegic. You could be in a horrible car crash. Like even my real dad said that, well, look what happened to them. They didn't believe. And so it was fear. Like I would thank God for everything. If I forgot, I'm sorry. I thank you, but as far as prophecy, I thought that was a little far-fetched. Because there's some holes in it. Like, what about babies? What about babies? And I don't know. And then just today, it's like, and then I also researched a lot of different other cults and doomsday shit, and it's all the same. It's like there's been so many different dates quoted, and we're still here. If it's true, I'm not worried about it. I'm ready to enjoy my life that I wasn't able to enjoy before. That's the least of my worries. Yeah, I'm enjoying the fleshes. I'm enjoying the sins. I love it.
You're enjoying being human.
I'm not a bad person. I'm not out there committing murders or anything, but I can enjoy stuff. You couldn't enjoy stuff in the cults.
The Witnesses false prophesied for over 100 years. From the 1900s, early on, all the way up till today, they're still false prophesying, and they don't give a shit. They'll just make what we had. That's 1975. It was supposed to be all over. Then they had the generation prophecy that was 70 or 80 years since 1914. It was supposed to be all over. Then they had the overlapping generation, and they didn't care. They just lied and lied again and lied again. And the people were just like blind sheep. You might as well put a blindfold on them and just lead them by the neck with a
Well, they would say that Jehovah gave them new light, that they were given new light. So it was a way to reinterpret the false prophecy, basically. And people are supposed to buy that Jehovah gave them new light. It's crazy.
So when go ahead.
I guess that's the thing. Like when, as an adult, I learned more about the cult, like more about what the adults went through. I mean, I know what I went through as a child, and I didn't believe it, but I'm like, when I saw the book 1975 and prophecy, when he actually named a date, and then it changed it. Not obviously we're all here. It didn't happen. Right. I'm like, how could people still stay? I could not get that. I couldn't get it. And plus, did you know that the auditorium in 77 was the end goal to be made? And but 75 was the day the world was supposed to end. But Mr. Armstrong said the finish date on the auditorium is 77. That doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't. Oh, I see. Yeah. They're finishing of the building of it.
Yeah, Faith said they're all cults, and she's right.
Because at that time, they were building this wonderful new auditorium, right? It was a really beautiful building, which they since sold. Lately, more recently, they sold it, I guess. But it was a beautiful building. So she's saying that building was not set to be finished until after the end of time in 1975. That's what she's saying. So the witnesses are doing the same thing right now. They're building all these media centers all around the world.
They're going online.
And here they're telling everybody any day, it's all over, right? But they know good and well that all this money they're sinking into these buildings, just beginning them in some places, will not be done for 2 and 3 more years.
Even more.
And this is like the splinter groups like PCG, Philadelphia Church of God, Flurry. He is like in Edmonton, Oklahoma. He is like tried to like replicate the glory of the auditorium, and he dumps a whole bunch of money in it. And it's like these, it's just copycat. And even like the Restored Church of God in Ohio, it's never ending. It's just, and I'm not saying this is only unique to worldwide. It's not, but it hasn't been brought out enough about worldwide. Like I've seen a lot of documentaries about Mormonism, and that's great. And I'm actually like, wow, we actually did believe in Zion and the like with how the fundamentalists believed, and but worldwide needs to be talked about. Just because we weren't Jim Jones, we didn't drink the Kool-Aid and die, doesn't mean it didn't have horrible effects of people on people.
Oh, yeah.
And there still can be a life after it, but it needs to be acknowledged. I mean, not these little fluffy podcasts that just like, oh, there's some patriarchal abuse. No, there is some real stuff that happens.
Well, come to talk about that patriarchal abuse. You remember when you were mentioning about what Garner Ted, I believe, wrote something about that if your wife doesn't behave, you can spank her.
Well, I don't know who
wrote
said that. I just know my mom told me that from the pulpit. If your wife gets out of line, go ahead and spank her.
Yeah,
I don't know who it
I
came
saw my
from.
dad doing that to
Yeah.
my mom, and I was flabbergasted. I thought he was trying to kill her or something. And my brother and I were just freaking out. I could go on about that, but it was terrifying.
So
traumatizing.
That's another thing, breeding grounds for domestic abuse right there, and breeding grounds for child abuse. And then there's the sexual abuse too. I don't know why that was a fact, but it was. I mean, I know people that went to SCP, they were molested by a youth worker, and Takach ordered a gag order on them, and they were not allowed to talk to their parents. But the worker had one day off to think about what he had done. There's like major abuses.
What about the fact that, it came out that Herbert W. Armstrong, like whatever with his daughter in the shower. And then I heard about the trips he went out of the country that he did little boys. And I mean, it's been a lot of stuff about these guys.
I guess it was pretty traumatic. Like, and there's a lot of people that, oh, well, if he did it, he's forgiven. Like they just gaslight it so much.
Totally.
It was really hard for me because I thought him as a grandpa figure. And then when I found out what a perverted SOB he really was, and then it makes sense. Well, I didn't have concrete memories of my own sexual abuse until my dad died. And I'm like, God, that's just one other thing he had in common with the cult leader. And Garner Ted wasn't a saint either. I know he was quite something else, but it's so sick and it's wrong.
It is, I mean, so they say that absolute power corrupts, but wait, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I don't know, something like that. But they had absolute power because, they had so much money. And that Mr. Rader, I saw something recently on Mr. Rader and how they investigated the church and everything because they felt that there was money laundering or in misuse of the funds. And oh my gosh, did that ever come out? And that's Garner Ted was saying that that's part of the reason why he split up with his father, his fights over about the money and stuff. But when you have all kinds of money that you don't know what to do with it, you have all power, and that power absolutely corrupts. It always seems to go to a sexual deviation kind of crap. And I always say that that's the sign of a cult right there. When sexual deviations start to go on, it's okay if I have sex with my daughter or whatever, because I'm the big shot here and I can do whatever I want. When you start seeing that kind of stuff, run. It's the side of a cult for sure. That's always in the devil's work.
Well, I was skimming over some stuff about how wives are supposed to act in marriage in the cults from that library, Herbert, HD library, whatever. And if the man thinks he's got so much control, why wouldn't he go down to abusing? Because I remember when it was so covert. I wasn't scared. This is how a woman should feel. He's teaching me. And the husband's supposed to teach the wife how to be spiritual, how to do this. You can even spank your wife, and you must be sexually satisfying to your husband. That you better do that too. It's everything. So yeah.
Yeah, one thing that incensed me to no end, I've been married and not very long either. And at this point, I was renting a home from my mother, but she split up from her husband for a little bit. I think No, anyway, they both ended up moving back to the house. And I'm in the kitchen and I'm hearing, I just got home from work. My husband and I are in the kitchen and we're hearing the elder telling my mother that the abuse that happened here in this family is all your fault, the sexual abuse, because you didn't satisfy your husband. And so instead of saying, okay, we're going to call the cops and you're going to be getting arrested because of what you did to these people, you are now going to, wife, you need to straighten up your act. You need to do a better job taking care of your husband. And my mom said she knew in her heart that that wasn't right, at least. But that incensed me. You can't possibly know. I was jumping up and down, fuming mad. I just couldn't even believe what I was hearing. That really brought low how I felt about the church at that point. It really did.
There is a book, do you remember, called The Total Woman by,
Yes, I do.
that was definitely
Blame women.
Maribel Morgan, I think was her name.
Uh-huh.
I remember seeing that in my parents' house. I remember
Yes.
that book.
Now, who was that, a church member who wrote that?
No, but it was church promoted. Like they liked that
Yes,
because
yes.
you're supposed to show up, like if your sex life is blah, show up at the door with just saran wrap on. I mean, it was all for the man, and I didn't read it, but I know my mom has told me things, and I read the reviews on it, and it's just like,
You know, it's funny. I noticed that my mother, once she got divorced, and she got divorced from 3 different Worldwide Church of God men. I can't believe that happened, but it did. And it ended up that she became the matriarchal. So we're talking patriarchal, but because of the abuse, you know, it says that the abused become the aggressor, you know, the oppressed become the oppressor. I feel that my mother took over the manly way of being, and when she got divorced, and I feel like she's the patriarchal whatever of my family right now. I really, really do. She's domineering, and I'm like, you know, again, the oppressed become the oppressor, and my mom became the dominant. It's weird.
I feel like if you don't get help, you can become the oppressor. Because I was oppressed, but I know I didn't sexually abuse anybody because I got help. There's a lot of people, you don't have to become the oppressor. You can find another way out of it, you know. And I'm just thankful that my parents made me go to therapy. I didn't want to. And then my therapist shows me a book about divorce. I'm like, this happened like, I was 19, like this happened like 14 years ago. But that's another thing. The church, no, we don't talk about anything. The only counseling you got was from the freaking pastor. There was nothing for the kids. How do you get out of this horribly abusive home? And that, nope, everything's fine. Then mom gets remarried and he saved the day, and no, and then there's like this built up rage and all this, and yeah.
Yeah, did they tell us we weren't allowed to go to worldly counseling? And why wasn't there anything for us?
There is nothing, because you weren't supposed to show. I remember, like, I cry when I get mad. Crying was my go-to. I was told I was weak. I was this for crying, like for so many times. Oh, for such long. Even like my last boyfriend, like he reminds me of my real dad. He said, yeah, I was weak. No, it's not. It's a strength to cry and to get it out.
Yeah, Jody said it's all about control and abuse. You know, and she said something else earlier too, but
another thing I wanted to say is that after my mom left my dad, granted a divorce, because like I can't even imagine writing into headquarters and asking for permission from this complete asshole, you know. So anyway, after that, my little brother got really sick right before the feast. He got spinal meningitis.
ooh,
And
ah,
we're gonna go to the Dells, and again, you know, it's all men ran. So go ahead and bring him down to the Dells. But then they're thinking, no, put him right in the hospital, because if that little baby dies, guess who's liable? My mom could have lost her children, and the cult could have been legally liable. And the horrible thing is that my mom was I don't even think the divorce was final. This happened like 10 months after. My dad was there too. And we were visiting my little baby brother in the hospital in Baraboo. And he was there trying to help he was taking care of us. My mom was super stressed out. I remember holding on to the crib. He's like, don't cry. You better not cry. My baby brother, I thought he was going to die. I remember hearing prayer requests from the pulpit. Please pray for, so-and-so. He's, and I couldn't, how hard it is to not cry when you're that little. And then, eventually he became deaf because of the meds they found water on his brain. He survived the meningitis, but then there was still water. So we all had to learn sign language and stuff. And it was, that was a good thing about our church. We had support, but the fact that we couldn't, I know my mom must have cried about it, but like I cried because it was devastating. Like, I think being the oldest and seeing all that abuse and then seeing your little brother almost die and then not have the support of people who are supposed to love you in a cult. They don't really, it felt very alone.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lack of love in there in a big, huge way. I got to tell you what happened to me is that I got married to a guy who said he would give up Christmas, birthdays, all of that for me. And then as soon as we went to counseling with the church and all that and the ministers, and when we got all done, got married, and then right away he reneged on everything. So I ended up kind of being forced to go to his family's house for Christmas. And I was very resentful, very angry about it all. And so 2 years in a row, I did that. And the end of the second Christmas, his mother took me in the bathroom and she says, Angela, come here, honey. And she took down in the medicine cabinet this bottle, Charlie perfume, and gave it to me. And she says, oh, it's not a Christmas present. I just want you to know we love you, honey. And we're so glad that you're in our family. I'm like, what? I've been a bee for 2 years. And you're now telling me you're so glad I'm in the family. Are you kidding me? I'm like, I didn't say that out loud. I was thinking it in my mind. I wouldn't say it right. I'm thinking it. And I thought, what is this? This is like weird. And then all of a sudden this thought came in my head or my heart. I don't know, something really loud. And it said, this is the love of God. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I just tucked that away in my heart. And that began my trek out of there. Because I realized something's terribly wrong. When this woman, she loved me unconditionally, didn't matter whether I was nice or not. She saw the good in me because she knew I was brainwashed, so she just loved me unconditionally. And she still does to this very day, even though I'm divorced from her son, she still loves me unconditionally. And so
Yeah,
I'm like, my mom doesn't have that kind of love is how I felt like. I have not seen that in the church, period. I said that to myself. Not that my mom's never loved me in wonderful moments. I'm not saying that, but overall, it's you're loved if and when you do everything perfectly right, and you obey and you keep everything exactly right. You do what you're told in the church, then you will be loved. But if you do anything wrong, then you're not loved in that moment. And that's how I felt like I had to do everything perfectly to the nth degree, or I won't be loved. That's no way to live.
We were kind of playing up to her one time, and I was the new husband, so I was like, we're not eating bacon right now, and we're keeping the Sabbath, you know what I mean? Not enough. You don't know anything. You're an idiot. What are you talking about? Oh, holy days. What the hell are holy days? What is she talking about? But what we realized was nothing we could do would satisfy her. You could do holy days, you could do this, you could do that, wasn't it?
Yeah, you could do holy days and Sabbath, but if you eat a little bit of bacon, you're not good enough. You're not in this
bottom
church.
feeding seafood like shrimp.
Right.
You're sinning.
Did you guys? Might as well be cigarettes.
Did you guys believe that everyone else had to die in order for you to reign in the earth, or did you feel like genocide had to come? Like the witnesses teach that the wicked are all of those outside the kingdom, all doors.
Well, okay, so I just know that like we were going to be saved. We were going to be hauled off to the Middle East, Petra, while the end of the world was going to happen. We were safe in the caves. And then when God comes back, everybody's going to be raised up from the grave. And this is when I'm a kid. I just remember like, there was, we're all going to be asked, do you accept God? And if you don't, you're going to be thrown in the lake of fire. And I just didn't like, that was like, who would say, no, I don't believe in God?
Right.
Who would say, I want to get fried? I don't know who would say that. And then they also, I remember hearing, God's going to know every single one of your sins. I'm like, do you know how long that's going to take? We're going to be in line forever going over our every tiny sin. Like it was just like insanity to me. So
Here's my confusion. Okay. See, I understood that the second resurrection was for all those who didn't get baptized. Okay. That's how I understood it.
yeah,
So if you didn't get baptized, it meant that you had a second chance.
right.
And so that would mean you didn't get baptized, right? So and so it should have been that you got a second chance in the second resurrection. So why were we so worried? I'm like, if you didn't get baptized, then there's not anything to worry about for those people. But yet we shunned them somehow when we were, when we would go out into the world. Those are the people that don't know about the truth, the Sabbath and the holy days, and they're not going to be in God's kingdom, at least that, right? But I don't know. It was a lot of judgment, even though they were going to be given a second chance. If they were going to be given a second chance, why was there so much judgment?
Then why did we have to go through all that work? Why couldn't we just be worldly and just sin and then we'll get the second chance anyway?
Well, that's true. That's what we believed, actually. I remember thinking, I don't want to get baptized because I want to have a little fun. Like you, I want to be
perfect.
she said. What's that about now? She said,
I expect perfection.
Yeah. So I wanted to just be a kid. I mean, the way it was is that I wasn't going to be able to drive because the end's going to come. I'm never going to get married. It's like, why live? But anyway, I just wanted to enjoy life while I could. And then I thought, well, at the last minute, when it's about time for Jesus to come back, then I'm going to get baptized because, I want to make it into the kingdom. But that was my thought. I wanted to have some fun. I want to be a kid. And and I wasn't baptized, so I was safe. All I had to do was wait so I can get into the kingdom. I have to get baptized. So I'll wait till I'm older, a teenager, then I'll get baptized. I ended up getting baptized, but it was I think I was 21 or 22, I think, when I finally did.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
You know something weird? What's her name again?
Roberta.
My mind slipped. But you know what's interesting? We just heard a talk that was given at an assembly by the Jehovah's Witnesses, one of their district conventions. And one of the main guys, it was online, one of the main guys, Stephen Lett, which is the governing body, which is called the Anointed. They're the ones who hear Jehovah's voice. They're the mediums, I call them mediums. But they give the information to the people after they hear. You don't translate the Bible for yourself. He said this about babies. He says, I know you think babies are cuddly and wonderful and cute, but let me tell you what a baby is. You'll shit. He said, babies are an enemy of Jehovah until they know the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is where I think all of the baby is an entity to be programmed. A baby needs to be beaten. A baby needs to be disciplined. A baby needs to obey, needs to learn discipline. It's not something to cuddle. The Bible says we were born free to serve God or not. We were never free. If we were brought up in religion, we were never free. We were abused. We were brainwashed. We were told this is the way it is. We were inculcated on and on and on. But now think about this. Think about what he said. A baby is an enemy of Jehovah. The reason Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate birthdays is because they say better is the day after. Better is the end than the beginning, because you don't know how a person's going to turn out. So you would celebrate his birth at the end, right? Or his death. Well, you've already judged the baby. You said the baby's an enemy. So he's guilty and has to prove himself innocent. In the Jehovah's Witnesses, this was at the district convention, 2022 district convention. Babies are guilty till proven innocent. They're an enemy. Now, don't you think 6 million people would run for their lives to have a psychopath say something like a psychopath? You're holding your baby. But you know what? Like you guys said, you didn't get the cradle. You didn't get held. You didn't get to cry and the mother go, oh, I love you anyway. Oh, I just cry, honey.
What was that you said about the bonding that you talked about with me?
Well, I know my mom, she said that based on GTA's book, you nurse the baby. And then once that's done, put the baby back. you don't sit there and like bond and, I mean, how can you not want that? She said that was very, very hard. Like, that's the most natural thing you can do is bond with your baby. No, he's fed, throw him in the crib. That's it.
Well,
Oh
my
God.
sister one time, she was my middle sister. I don't want to use her names. They'll be mad at me probably. But my dad, she was born and she was a crier. She cried a lot. I know that my mom was going through a really hard time when she was going through, so emotionally not really super probably strong. And so she was born a crier and she was so beautiful. She's a beautiful, beautiful baby. But man, my dad would not let my mom go and take care of her in the middle of the night. Just let her cry. Nope, don't go in there. Just let her cry. She cried and cried and cried and cried, and he would just spank her and no, you are not allowed to cry. It was the same like you said. I mean, I thought you were a little extreme, saying that. And then I thought back, no, my dad did that to my sister Julie. We are all not allowed to cry really either. I mean, I just think it's because of my sister, my baby
I
sister.
feel like, like
No touch.
there.
My dad said no. Wait, she says my dad said no touch.
Jody. Yeah.
Jody said that.
Couldn't even touch your baby.
You're encouraged not to touch your baby. Why?
Slap his hands.
So you have to slap it in the hand. A lot of slapping of the hand.
There's 32 people on here listening.
That's great.
Yes.
I just want to say, like, some people, like, I feel like it was based on areas and different pastors, because like everybody, it's not just like this is the way it was, this for everybody. It's variations,
I
because
agree.
like some people that I grew up with, they never experienced what I experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
my mom kept wanting to have baby after baby after baby. It satisfied her to have a baby. So I think that, I don't know. I think she felt like she was she had a purpose. She had a baby to take care of that gave her purpose. I think somehow that was really important to her because she had a purpose. Maybe my dad would love her more if she had brought another baby. I don't know it, but she loved to have babies. But then
that's funny that you say that your sister was a crier, because like I guess was the perfect baby, because I like every cry meant something. And once I was satisfied, I didn't cry. But my sister, everything would be fine with her and she still would cry. She just needed more attention. But but Roberta's perfect. That doesn't mean I'm perfect. And it doesn't mean she's bad. It's just personalities. And another thing about crying, I remember when my first little brother was born, and I'm the oldest, I named after my dad. You just add an A to Robert and you have Roberta. But I know he wanted a boy. When he first got his boy, my little brother, he was also told not to cry. I mean, for a man to cry, well, that's even worse. And he used to pose my little brother on like tractors, like heavy equipment, and sit there and grin. And my brother would be like tears streaming down his face. I'm not crying, Daddy. I'm not crying. And that's just like, he was only 2.
It's heartbreaking.
Only 2.
Gosh, that's horrible.
It was like discipline was more important than love.
Yeah,
it definitely was.
Yeah, it was like associated with, if you love your kid, that's what they taught in the witnesses. If you beat your kid, you love them. The fear of Jehovah is the beginning of wisdom. So if you feared God and you beat your kids, if you use the rod, right, it would remove things from them. We were beaten to death too. And we've interviewed a lot of people on the radio, and they were severely beaten. My dad would knock us to the ground and kick us into the other room and just knock us around. We'd wonder when we were going to stop getting knocked around. But a lot of people asked in the witnesses, they said, why were we so beat? Why did they knock the shit out of us? Why did they hit us so hard? Why did they bruise us? Why did they beat us till we couldn't walk?
Well, let me just add to that. You want to know what
Doctrine over person, that's right.
You want to know what they called Jehovah's Witnesses? They told their members to call themselves good for nothing slaves. And that what you're doing, you ought to be doing. It always went together with that. You were just good for nothing slaves. The answer to this one meeting I went to one time to see his brother in Missouri, the answer to every question was, the answer is we're good for nothing slaves. And what we're doing, we ought to be doing like anyway, right? And so if you tell somebody to say that about themselves or think that of themselves, what do you think they're going to turn out like? Duh. Right. And I just think to myself, when I look at religion after religion after religion, it's kind of meant to weaken us instead of strengthen us in love towards our creator, and feel good about ourselves and have good self-esteem and good hopefulness and dreams and faith and joy and be a real powerful person on this earth because I'm a great artist, I'm a great musician, whatever. No, we're weak. We're good for nothing. Kids are nothing. To be seen and not heard. Might as well be wives too. Wives are treated like shit. To be seen and not heard as women too. I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel like also that being taught, like, if it's man-made, if it comes from man, it's automatically bad. Like, we can't enjoy anything that was man-made. Well, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of great inventions out there, and that's like my disconnect with God. Like, I can't see God. I know something bigger happened, because look at how beautiful nature is. I appreciate that, but it's not up to me. It's not a burning question I go to bed with. What happened? Like, who did this? How did it happen? I don't really care, because there's other things to focus on. Just the pure enjoyment of being outside or enjoying a cup of coffee. There's so much life, and it has nothing to do with believing in a deity or anything. We could just enjoy and connecting as human beings. I didn't really have friends, not like real friends that actually loved me. It was all based on beliefs. Now I can finally realize, yeah, people like me for me, and not everybody's going to live up to your expectations too. I'm learning what the human condition is, and it's beautiful. It's not an ugly thing like how we were taught.
Jody Scott said, yeah, being in the moment, learning how to be in the moment.
Find the joy.
Yes. And I want to add to it. Dan said to me one time, Angela, do you just have to have everything in a box, like a nice, neat box where, everything's all figured out? Because see, when I left the worldwide, and then I ended up later on, I got into another cult. And so then when I got out of that cult, then it was like, well, I got to find another church at least that
has all the answers.
And my nice little neat box, I have all the life's mysteries figured out. And he goes, can't you just be in the mystery? Do you have to know everything? And I'm like, no, I need to know everything. And then I thought about it. I thought, how nice that would be to be able to live in a world where you didn't have to know the answer to everything. You don't have to have all the ducks in a row. Just be in the mystery. And I was like, I like that idea that I could be so free if I would just not worry about it. Like, who cares if this is how it's going to go down, or that's, you know what I mean? It's like, do I have to really know exactly? No, it's not that important. So I'm like, no, I'm going to be in the mystery.
You know what I felt too?
I don't have to know everything anymore.
As we traveled around, we went to like 200 different churches and spiritual groups. And my attitude was this: why does somebody else have to always die because we don't believe like you? Like, when you go in the Christian community, and unless every knee bends, Jesus is going to whack their heads off with a sword. If you go into this religion, why does somebody else have to die because we don't believe like them? And we go into church after church, and there were 200 Christian churches divided with it amongst themselves, divided against each other. We believe in the Sabbath. We believe in this. We believe in, what was it? All the different levels of Christianity. It was Nazarene, Lutheran, Catholic, and
Methodist.
And they all were divided against each other, and they all had dogma, and they all gave us a time period, because we did this for, I don't know how many years. We just visited, and they all gave us a time frame, and they said,
not like a set time frame, but it was
you could tell it was time for you to leave,
right?
Because they say, are you going to join the church? Are you going to get baptized? How about if I just get baptized into God? Why don't I do that? No.
I wanted to be a pianist for one church. Like, they actually let me one time when I was pregnant. I'm like, by the way, I'm pregnant, just so you know. They're like, oh, that's okay,
Oh my God.
And then the lady's like, she came up to me, the woman pastor, she's like, if I could save you, my work is well worth it. I'm like, okay.
No.
But this other church I wanted to be a pianist for, they're like, well, just, feel it out, da, 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 da. At the end of the day, I had to sign beliefs. Like, I believe in speaking tongues. I believe that I'm like, I just want to play piano.
Yes.
I don't want to be a member.
Right.
I'd go there just to get Bibles. They'd say, come on up, come on, and we're going to touch you or something.
Yeah.
Say you believe in Jesus. I said, okay. And then I say, what do I got to do now? Well, you got to speak in tongues. And I'd look around and see what people were saying. And I go, Anamashi, Anamashi. And they give me a Bible and they'd all go, oh my God, and I'd be like, but it was ridiculous.
Well, at the Seventh-day Adventist church, we were going there for a little while. It was in our neighborhood, and a friend was really into it. And my dad's also Seventh-day Adventist. So we were going there. It's right like a block and a half away from us. And so anyway, we liked these people, well enough and everything. But then they was like, well, you need to get baptized. And we're like, okay, but we don't want to get baptized in the church. We just want to get baptized into the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit, and just be a part of the basic church, not meaning Seventh-day Adventist, but the Church of God, wherever that might take us. Oh, no. You have to be it was all about numbers. They're trying to get numbers, and we were going to not be a number that they could count, because we were just going to get baptized into not the specific church. They said no, and they would not baptize us. Can you believe that? Oh.
I do appreciate that. Like I said, my grandma got my mom into it, but my grandpa, on the other hand, he called the National Enquirer his Bible. And and he's like, he didn't buy into it at all. He's like, when you guys leave for the end of the world, I'll be waving goodbye, mowing the lawn. So that was very nice to have. Like, maybe it's not true. I mean, Grandpa's not worried, so why should I be?
Hey,
funny.
you want to know what? One of the governing bodies, see, they're getting mad, right? Because there's a growing number of people that are speaking up, and they can't hide anymore. And so there's these old guys, like somebody said, old white people running it. Well, this old guy came on there, and he's so mad at us because we speak against it. We say this is wrong. He literally said this. He goes, you know something? He goes, aren't you guys going to be glad when real soon all of Jehovah's enemies are dead? And he goes like this. He goes, and this is on jw.org live. He pulls out a match, and he goes, I really want to drive this point home, people. And he lights this match, and he goes, this are all those apostates out there and all those people that are Jehovah's enemies. And he blows it out. You know what he's blowing out? My fucking candle. He's blowing out my heart, saying he wishes I was dead.
And that you
not
just
return,
like that, they'll
not
be gone.
return to Jehovah.
They'll be gone.
Not that he come to repentance, not that he's a prodigal son coming home.
Just 1 second, okay? We hear you.
But anyway, long story short, I mean, that was creepy. These are people and he got a standing ovation.
Yes.
The people are like, oh my God, well, half of the people are your family.
In other words,
that they're plotting, the people that have left.
They're saying that you blow out the candle, and then all of those are going to, just like how they're just going to disappear, and everybody's clapping, but a lot of those are their children that are going to not be in the kingdom. They're going to be blown away like they don't exist. And it was horrifying.
Who's this guy that wants to say something?
Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Someone wants to say something.
All right.
Go ahead. Someone with sunglasses and a beard. Do you guys see him?
J-Dub, Alaska.
I guess you don't want to say nothing.
No, he's gonna say something.
Okay.
No, I was actually just clearing my throat. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm just
Okay,
here
that's
to
a good
listen.
comment. That's a good comment. We appreciate it. Again.
I thought he's like, wait a minute, that's not true.
No, but isn't it crazy though that men in charge would wish me dead? I mean, really, think about that. I wish you were dead. Now, what gives a person, think about this. The Bible is the only thing I know that gives people permission to kill, hate, shun. I mean, treat like crap. They tell you how to treat babies. Horrible.
The Bible,
the Bible. The Bible's a license for murder. It's a license to hate. It's a license to say, well, God can kill all you because you don't believe. I mean, it's horrible.
They use it as a license. They twist it how they want it. And I personally even believe that there's a whole bunch of things that were taken out of the Bible that were once there. It makes it a completely different meaning. And that's my prerogative. I really, truly believe that.
I think it's used as a weapon.
I do too. It was definitely a weapon for me. I'm going to tell you what, when I got out of the Worldwide Church of God, and then I actually found what I believe is more like what I believe today. Then I got unsucked into my husband's cult, and that one about took my life. But at the end of all that, what were we just saying now, Dan? Oh shoot, now I forgot what I was going to say. What were we just saying, guys?
About the Bible being used as a weapon.
Yes. So when I got out, I'm going to tell you what, every time I would try to open the Bible and read it, I just started trembling and shaking. And every time it just seemed like it was talking about me. I'm the one who's going to be in the lake of fire. And I'm going to be the one who's, not in the kingdom. God's mad at me. And I don't know. Every time I was like, I couldn't read
She
it.
cried for years
I
after we
couldn't
were
read it.
married. She'd wake up and I said, well, throw that thing away for a while. Get rid of
I
it.
did have to. And I believe that some people really do have to have that experience of having a break. And we should be allowed to have those breaks. You guys, when we need them, we should be allowed to have as long a break as we need. Study all the religion we want to study. It did not
Yeah.
do me any
I want to
harm.
make one point too.
Yes.
You mentioned, Roberta, you had to go through therapy. And think about it. A lot of the witnesses have to go through therapy too. They have to go on antidepressant. I mean, they have to go through heavy duty stuff. We just had a guy, my friend, killed himself. He couldn't take it. The elders came to his house. They even said, hey, told his wife he left. He was an elder. And they were even telling his wife, you can come stay with us until this thing mends or until your husband's gone. They told his kids that the birds were going to pick out his eyes, and he blew his brains out. I was supposed to see him last week or a couple of weeks ago, and it made me cry. And I went and visited him, his hometown, and it was really sad, but he was pushed over the edge by Watchtower, and he was pushed over the edge by brainwashing. And here's the thing I was going to ask you, Roberta, why do people, I believe in therapy is a great thing. I wish I would have got into it. I didn't know I was in trauma. I didn't know I was lost. But could you say a little bit about the therapy you went through so people aren't afraid of it? So maybe,
Yeah. Well, I've always been the pioneer in my family, and I was the only one that got therapy, like for stuff that happened to all of us. And I was 19, and it was actually because I got fired from a job at SCP, and I was really depressed. And so they're like, get into therapy. But once the stuff started coming out about my biological dad, it really wasn't about the cult, because we were still in the cult. Well, I was on my way out, but I guess I felt a little ostracized from my family. They didn't like the crying. They didn't like me showing emotion. And it was very hard, but I stuck with it because my therapist believed in me, and other people besides my family showed me love, and I kept with it. For something in me made me just want to speak my truth, because I was never able to in a safe environment and not get shunned for showing emotion.
Yes.
And then I also tried to kill myself. 2013, I almost was successful. I took a whole bottle of Xanax, but luckily my friend, who's a therapist, called the paramedics. I know what it's like I was suicidal the whole time in the cult. I did not want to live.
Wow.
And so therapy, everybody's different. Some people don't. I guess, like, as far as healing from the cult, the most, like, I could only get so far with my therapist, because they're like, wow, Roberta, you could write a book, you could do this. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to, I'm not telling you this to like shock and awe people. I finally found a Facebook group, and there's some people on this thing right now are part of it. And that's the only way I found true support and more healing from the cult, because I realized, wait a minute, the cult did a lot of stuff too. It wasn't just my family unit. And so then I've met people. I've never met them face to face. I would love to. And sharing, just letting them. I used to just write paragraphs about all my experiences, and they were so supportive, and I was able to listen to other people's experiences. It's so uniting. It's like to know what the all the acronyms, or what days, all this stuff that we had in common, like it still mattered. And I've healed a lot from these relationships I met with the survivors group.
Can you recommend a group for people?
Well, the cult survivors, how is it? Herbert Armstrong is really great.
Herbert,
Herbert is called Herbert Armstrong.
how
Okay.
funny.
That's a
Like
good one.
Cindy or Jody, what's the the cult survivors, how does the rest of it go? Like, can you type that in? I can't remember the whole title. Sherry's group. Because she doesn't let us talk about politics, which I think is kind of good.
Yeah.
But
What do they do, Roberta? What do they do? I've never been to counseling. Do they like listen to you? Do they validate you? Do they get into religious stuff, help you untangle, or what the heck do they do? So
okay,
people aren't afraid when they go.
Okay, so for therapy, she sometimes it was hard at first. She just stared at me and asked me questions, and I'm like, I don't know, because if you're not used to talking, and then don't give up if you think it's hard, because it's supposed to be hard. I'm in therapy now and I still have things I'm dealing with. Just make sure that they're validating you. And I was told that I don't have PTSD because that's only for soldiers, and I walked out of there. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not true. So you really kind of got to do your own research and go with your gut if you feel something's off, but there's so many different types. I like talk therapy. There's group therapy. I don't really like group therapy because I want to be the only one talking. Sorry. But because I have so much, but there's also books too. Like when I was sexually abused and I couldn't find a good therapist, I got some books on sexual abuse just to be validated. It's so important to be validated and you're not alone. That's one of the biggest takeaways I have from therapy is to be validated and you're not crazy.
No,
because
exactly.
a lot of people gaslit us.
They really do. And that, like Jody said, that they don't acknowledge the trauma and the PTSD trauma. They don't acknowledge those kind of things in there. And that just amazes me because that's very real. And, they caused it. That's what makes me so mad. Somebody's going to do a wrongful death lawsuit in the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not going to tell you anything more about it. But I thought, you know what? I would like to see this church taken down because, first of all, I thought kind of it was. And because it kind of got switched over to a different belief system and all of that. And then all of a sudden now I'm feeling it's coming back bigger than life. And I'm like, oh, no, you don't. And it made me mad that the Jehovah's Witnesses have somebody to go sue if they are all the time. But where do we go? I mean, these guys disbanded and then they became a new church under a new title, under a new, whatever. And I don't know. It's like, I feel like in a lot of ways there's nowhere to go sue. But however, GCI maybe. Okay. I'm sure.
I'm just glad you guys are opening up the door and are willing to talk about this.
Wrongful death, wrongful death lawsuits. I bet that we could file lots of wrongful death lawsuits. Like, for example, your father, stepfather who killed himself, because you know what? He was taken to the brinks, and it's wrongful death because they mind controlled us and they messed with our minds and they made us worry and fear. And I say there should be a whole lot of lawsuits. I am so ready to go. I'm so mad right now.
I know that there's this one guy who he was like my best friend in the group, and he passed away a couple years, but both his older siblings took their lives because of the guilt of the cult.
Exactly.
And they were young. They were so young. And it is truly complex PTSD. It's not just straight PTSD. Like Cindy said, it's complex PTSD.
Yes, CPTSD, complex. Thank you, Cindy, for sharing that. I saw that and I didn't know what that meant. Complex, CPTSD.
Okay.
Because complex is complicated.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, it's because it's not just, it's a systematic way of we lived, and it was all in like our whole way of life. Like even my mom said, like people would ask their pastors, what color car should I buy? What color paint should I use for my house? I mean, every facet of our life was controlled.
Yes.
Is it like if you have a red car, you're going to go pick up people and you're a party or something like that?
I have no idea why they had to feel the need to ask.
That was our church. If you had a red sports car, you were going to go out and get laid. You couldn't have just a red car because you liked it with tan leather seats. it meant you were going through your second, whatever.
Yeah, and there they have a book for every kind of thing known to mankind to go refer to, so you don't have to use your mind at all. That's another thing I had to learn, how to use my mind. I had to just, figure out what is it that I like, what is it I believe about everything imaginable to mankind, and my own belief, not just what I'm told to believe. And that was a big deal because I was so used to be told what to do. Matter of fact, if I had a differing view, or I would say something my mom didn't like, I was told that I'm twisting things and that my mind doesn't work right, and that I'm this, that, and just always I'm not seeing it right. You're not seeing it right. You're twisting that. She always tell me that you're twisting it. Come to find out, she's the one who twists things. And I saw it straight. And then Dan started telling me when I met him, "Oh, Angela, you saw that straight." And I'm like, "I did?" And like, oh yeah. And I'm like,
Second
oh
guessing
my
herself
gosh.
all the time.
Yes. And so I trust my intuition. I trust what I see. And I can't believe how I wasn't allowed to think. So what I did was I just shut down. I'm like, if I'm not allowed to have my own opinion, and I can't say that I don't like Aunt Janie because she blah, 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 or whatever, then I'm going to be shut down. So I might as well not say anything. So I just went into my own little cave, and I didn't share my own feelings or choose to have my own beliefs or how I saw things, because I'm not allowed. I'll get excommunicated if I do.
And Cindy clarified complex PTSD. PTSD is just like one event. Complex is multiple events. So,
Yeah, just want to guess later.
but I also know I've seen it where it says if you were raised in a cult, that's more than likely your complex PTSD.
Oh, gotcha.
That's
That's
good to know.
Yeah, it is. I didn't know that.
That's a new statement.
And it's another thing I love. Like, I was watching Under the Banner of Heaven, and it's a really good show. It's about like this cop, Andrew Garfield. There was a murder, and it questions all his belief systems. And he's like, I keep getting this voice, like it's the devil's working in my mind, like it keeps protruding through. And the guy's like, no, that's your own thoughts. Like, that's not the devil. And that's the thing. Like, I love thinking for myself. I love embracing my intuition, because and every single time I ignored it. I wish I hadn't.
I'm sorry.
Intuition is like one of the biggest gifts we could ever have.
Amen to that. Hey,
I wanted to say Cindy's
yes.
a licensed
Cindy
health-
Woodman.
Yeah,
Cindy
okay, you
Woodman,
guys
a
know. Good to
licensed
know.
health. Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, look her up. Cindy Woodman, Woodmen, licensed mental health practitioner.
Man, you guys are amazing. You guys got a big group on here. There's 93 people on
she
here.
said it's spelled Wodmen. They spelled it wrong on the internet here. So it's
Well,
Wodmen. Sorry, guys. Licensed
Cin-
mental health practitioner. Okay.
Cindy, I can attest to, is like, when I was telling my mom about, like, well, Koch did this, Koch did that, and she's like, can we just stop? Like, she said something, and Cindy's like, that's cognitive dissonance, sweetie. And she was Cindy, I really like you. And she, like, for like, even when I
techniques.
Hey, Cindy.
She is just like one of the great people in these groups that just validate, even when you feel like your own family doesn't. Like, it's really important.
Hey, would you describe what a cognitive dissonance is for
These are
everybody?
good tools.
Yeah, that's important to understand what that is.
Absolutely. I think probably the easiest way to describe it is, okay, so we've all grown up in a cult-ish sort of way, right?
Right.
We've learned certain things about who we are supposed to be, our role in the world is supposed to be, all of those things. And as we grow up and get to adulthood, or we encounter new people, new places, new things, we suddenly are presented with different evidence that makes us question those old beliefs and thoughts. And now we have to decide, oh my God, is that stuff I used to believe real, or is this real? And it's it just creates this dissonance in your head where you don't really know what to believe. And that makes it very hard to make good decisions. It creates a lot of big feelings. It creates a lot of huge emotions. People go off the rails a lot of times with that, and they will do anything that they can to avoid having to think about it or feel those great big feelings, because it's really uncomfortable being challenged in that way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great explanation. Thank
Yeah.
you, Cindy. Yeah, because your whole infrastructure is threatened. Everything you know and believe, you're without any table, right? Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. You guys, how are we doing on time? We've been an hour and 20 minutes. Maybe we should begin to wrap up. Is there anybody who would like to comment or say something to
I
Roberta?
want to say there's a big group of people listening, 98
Yeah.
people out there, almost 100
98?
people.
Oh
Yeah,
my
98
goodness.
people listening.
Wow. So anybody have any questions for Roberta? She's got Jody and it's like Jody Scott. Go ahead.
Oh, she's just saying thank you.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you, Roberta.
Well, you know, I'm glad.
Welcome, Jody.
Yeah, thank you, Jody. I'm so glad that you guys are coming forward. I can't tell you how much healing. We've had a radio station for a couple of years, and we've seen so many people heal. And you know how they heal? People talking, sharing their story, being transparent, like you were
Getting
tonight,
validated.
saying I went to a therapist. A lot of people won't ever say that. Oh, I made it myself. But to say I got help, I got on my feet, I got some understanding, I got some tools, and people sharing their story and being validated. Go ahead.
There's 2 people that have their hands up.
Okay, go ahead. Yep, go right ahead, whoever.
Whoever, just go ahead. I don't know what to do to
Yeah, just tell them to go ahead and
just,
talk.
yeah, just talk. Just as soon as you talk, your face will be seen for all of us. Just start talking.
Just unmute.
Huh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
This is
Faith.
Faith.
Yep.
Okay. I've had my mute unmuted this whole time.
okay.
Oh, I'll figure it out one day. So anyways, Roberta, wow. Thank you so much for sharing how this has been for you. And I can't even tell you, as someone who has grown up a Jehovah's Witness, how many similarities that has shown up in your story with mine, and even some of the things I've heard Dan talk about. Wow. The
Well-
thing, and I also wanted to compliment you on your picture frame. That's really cool. Yeah.
Thanks. Well,
That was Linda James, by the way.
the cult,
Forgot.
the cults picked up some of the beliefs of JWs. So that's why we have similar things, like not celebrating holidays, not celebrating your own birthday. He picked from multiple 7-day.
Very
Jews,
common for
like all
groups
these
to do
different-
that. Yeah. They
Yeah,
kind
he
of
cherry
grab an
picked.
eclectic amount, and then they start their own.
Yeah, and
And
Judaism. He picked up Judaism, and
Mhm.
picked and chose what he wanted.
I can remember my mother listening to him over the radio, and he had such a calm voice,
He-
and it just very
Maybe in the
soothing voice.
beginning, Mr. Armstrong or Garner Ted.
Yeah, Garner Ted.
Armstrong is who I'm talking about.
Yeah, but there's Garner Ted Armstrong and then Herbert W. Armstrong. That's the father, the older
Oh,
guy.
The father
I
was
believe I'm
screaming.
speaking. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I believe I'm speaking of the father. I was like, it was my childhood, so we're talking the 70s. In the 70s, so whoever was in the leadership at that point.
Yeah, that was really both of them. Well,
Okay.
was it a nice handsome guy or was it an old guy? Do you remember? Just curious.
It was just radio, so I had just heard the
Oh,
voice.
it's just radio.
Right. Yeah,
Just
yeah,
a
yeah.
Right.
smooth talking voice.
Well, the radio was probably Herbert W. Armstrong then because Garner Ted was TV and her, yeah, so it was Herbert W. You're right.
She moved up to Oregon, like to be next to him in
Oh,
Grants
wow.
Pass, Oregon.
Oh, wow.
Another thing I wanted to mention is that, as I'm listening to you talk about how you weren't allowed to cry, and my father at one time suggested to me not to cry because it upset my mother so much. And when you're put in a position to not be able to release the natural emotions that would come up from the circumstances you're in, that's like asking for a mental breakdown,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, true.
And-
Linda.
And when we're in high demand, high control groups, that's a lot of what they want us to do, to not pay attention to our intuition, to not pay attention to how we have to deaden our body, like not allow it to feel anything. And if we do feel it, we surely cannot show it because it is considered weak. And I can tell that you are tapped into what's going on within you at this time. And it's really delightful to see. It's
It
very
is.
delightful to
It
see.
is.
Thank you.
I can tell you've just come such a long way. I'm so I want to say I'm so proud of you, but it's like, well, I just am. I'm proud of you. Good for
Well,
you. And
there
I
was
do
a
this
point.
journey too. So yeah.
I remember I could not talk about my real dad without sobbing my eyes out. Like it was, oh my God, like just, it was horrible. I can't believe I have come this far, because I used to be such a baby. But it was just not a baby, but like just so emotional all the time. Like I'm never gonna kick it. That's what I always thought.
I feel like that there's some of us who are emotional beings and we're meant to be that way. And other people are a little bit more stoic. And then there's the matter of fact kind of people. There's every kind of people, and we need all of them in the world. So I don't think we should have been treated that way for being emotional or sensitive.
You know what's
or
interesting
intuitive.
too about all this?
What?
What's interesting about the witnesses and about the worldwiders is discipline and shunning, okay? The beliefs can change. They can say, oh, the lake uprighter, which means we got it wrong and we screwed up. But here's the thing. Even in Angela's mother, when I was asking her about the Sabbath, right? I said, well, the Sabbath, Friday night till Saturday night, you can't do anything, right? And so we said, well, how about firefighters? How about, well, actually, she changed that. It's like, that didn't used to be that way. It was like the Sabbath was the Sabbath was the Sabbath. But now it's like, well, the firefighters can do that. The people in the hospital can help people and do this. And she says all the time, you guys are picking and choosing from the scriptures. But the interesting thing was the discipline never changes. Well, we haven't accepted you back, Angela. Yeah, you're out of our faith. So it's so sickening that these scriptures can change and fluctuate and dates can go all over the place. But that discipline, you're going to be shunned. You're not welcome,
Well, here's the thing. I remember the rules changing because I lived in Pasadena, California, went to the Imperial Elementary School for all the years and then into junior high a little bit. And I remember that they were changing the dresses have to be down to your knee. And now they have to be a little bit lower, then back up a little bit. And then your birthdays are okay. Now they're not okay. And they are again. Now they're not again. It's always change up, right? They change up whatever they felt like changing. And that's not God. God doesn't change. They're men. They wear their pants the same way that we do.
But we weren't allowed to wear pants or makeup for
Oh, that's
years.
right, I
and years.
forgot.
Raised hands.
Oh,
Is there other people that raise their hand?
Sorry,
We don't
Yeah,
want to
Paige is raising her hand.
okay. Paige, go ahead.
unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, unmute yourself. Oh, thanks for
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Um,
Paige.
I'm Paige. Roberta, I just wanted to say how blown away I am by your strength to speak about all this. Roberta and I actually went to high school together, and I never thought of you as a weirdo. I thought you were shy.
Yes.
That's it. That's
Thanks.
all I had to say.
Thanks, Paige.
Paige.
Well, go ahead.
Anybody else got their hand up? Linda does.
Yes. Linda, are you
May I
done?
say one more thing?
Yeah.
As I was listening to the stories about how babies are to be treated and, blanket behavior and this, that, and the other, what it kept telling me was the natural bond between a mother and a child within that first 5 years was being restricted.
Mm,
And that it's a bond that within that first 5 years really needs to happen for a child to have a good enough sense of self.
that's
and
so
and
true.
I noticed it like a neon sign. And what I've noticed about cults in general is that the leadership wants to do something to separate that bond, because that bond gets in the way of your loyalty to the leadership. And a
Ooh,
narcissist cannot deal with that. And most cult leaders are narcissists. So it's very much the characteristic of a narcissist. So
yes,
yeah, I found that very fascinating.
very.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I remember like learning about how important the first 5 years of your life, like your brain development, like so much is crucial in that. And if trauma happens or abuse, it's really
Oh, Cindy is
something
saying,
else.
Cindy is saying it creates a dependency upon the church. Good point, Cindy. I
Yeah.
didn't catch the whole thing, but yes, most everything that we're led to do puts us in that position of being more dependent on the church or the leadership of the group rather than
right.
ourselves or our immediate family.
Yeah, and
So, yeah.
I'll say one more thing, Linda, concerning that. That's why in our religion, they always drove us into our head. That they told us over and over, the heart is treacherous and desperate. The heart
Who
can
can know it?
the heart can love an animal. Witnesses don't want you to love your animal. They call it some kind of worship. The witnesses don't want the bond, like you said with the kid. I mean, so they keep us in our head. You know why? That's where the programming is. The heart can't be
Exactly.
programmed. The heart is what falls in love. The heart is what can love somebody unlike you. That's why the Bible says, love your neighbors yourself. Well, you can't do that if you're a witness. Anyway,
Not if we're filthy slaves. It's kind of hard to love our neighbor
Exactly
when we
right.
can't love ourselves, you know?
You know, I remember one thing about the whole thing with my husband. My mother trained me to believe that the man is the head of the home, and at all costs, you want your man to be the head of the household. Okay. So when I got married, my husband, as I told you, he was going to be a part of my church, but then he reneged. And so now I took the authority so that I understood that I was to be the authority in the home at this point. Well, later on in life, my husband decided to turn to God. And so so one day my son says to my dad, to his daddy, he was like 5 years old. He goes, Daddy, did you let Jesus in your heart? And he goes, oh, I was just waiting for you guys to notice. And so then he says to me, after dinner, honey, I want to take a walk with you. So I'm like, okay. So I'm all excited. Finally, my dreams come true. My husband's the head of the household, first time ever. I'm so excited. And we go for a walk and he goes, well, honey, you're going to have to listen to me now. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's so great. Oh my gosh, my husband is taking a lead in the home. And, you know, just as my mother taught me. And you guys, I'm gonna tell you what, big mistake. He became a cult leader, and I did not know, because you know what? I trusted everything. He's now the leader. I gave the reins over, and I took the responsibility, gave it to him for everything, And I lost out because of that poor training, a lie from the pit of hell, because that was not the right way to go. And my husband ended up being a cult leader and about took my life after 16 and a half years. I about didn't make it.
Yeah.
So I don't suggest that. You know, even though we were trained that way, you have to take responsibility for your own life. That's all I got to say.
is there somebody that got a hand up to Faith? Angelic raised her hand.
Faith
Yeah.
Angelic.
Go ahead.
Just take yourself off mute, Angelic. There's a button, I think it's on the left, far left. It says mute, just to push that and then start talking.
She might not have removed her hand.
Okay. All right.
Well, we better wind it
Yes,
up.
we are going to.
Thank you so much. It was a
Roberta.
great interview. Thank you for being transparent. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
your heart, some intimate things. Thank you for telling us like it was, being transparent. It's going to help a lot of people be transparent and tell their story too. And we hope anybody listening, it says there's 99 plus on there. So if anybody wants to share their story, feel free to contact Angela.
Yes.
And we'll get it scheduled, because this is the beginning of healing, the beginning stages. Go ahead.
Real quick, the way to get a hold of Roberta is, again, you reach out to her on Facebook. She's known as Roberta Marie. And then on Instagram, it's Roberta Hankanen.
Hankanen.
And Hankanen.
Honk, honk.
I got it. I'm going to do that every time now.
And then guys, I've got a book coming out called Awakening from Unconscious Resentment, because if we bury this stuff, we become resentful, which becomes, it's rage, it's all kinds of things. And we have to learn how to get it out and deal with it and get our voice. So my book's really going to be great. It talks a lot about codependency. You can check Dan and I out. We have a Facebook page called Life After Religion -XJW. And so you can check out that Facebook page. And then my Facebook page was just X Worldwide Truth Seekers, because we're all on our journey. And so anyway, that's it. But thank you all for coming. We sure appreciate your being here. And thank you, Roberta, so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, all you guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Night.